Wildflowers in Watercolor by Deb Watson. Today we're doing Queen Anne's lace. We're going to use masking with a little piece of natural sponge, loose washes, and salt. I've drawn on a few Queen Anne's lace flowers. For the full lesson or more examples, visit my website, debwatson.org, for the free lesson. To use sponging, you want a natural piece of sponge that has lots of spiky edges. I'm dipping the damp sponge in the PBO masking. Any type of masking should work for this. And I'm being fairly careful that I mask on a nice pattern that leaves lots of open areas in the middle. You'll be amazed how much this actually looks like Queen Anne's lace when we're done. This is an easy project. Now the masking will probably ruin the piece of sponge. You can wash it out quickly and you may be able to save it, but masking is hard on sponges and brushes. That's why I'm using an old craft brush to suggest some stems, and I'm bringing the stems up through the flowers for that peekaboo effect. Once that's dry, I'm going to wet my paper completely. That means I wet the front very well, then I turn it over and I wet the back. I'm only using a medium-sized brush here, so it's taking a little longer than normal. Usually a big brush or a big piece of sponge will wet the paper faster. I drip off the excess water, and I'm using 3 colors, a red, yellow, and blue, but you can use your favorite colors or just use your imagination and do this any way you want. This is phthalo blue, and I mixed up a pretty thick puddle. The darker the color behind the flowers, the whiter they're going to seem. I'm going to mix the blue and the yellow to make some green and put that at the bottom. You'll notice I mix it up a couple times so I have a nice thick dark green, at least for part of it. I'm also using, I think, permanent rose, but I want this to be primarily blue and green and just a little bit of red to add highlights. So for the red, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and I'm just going to tap that on my finger to spatter on a few little bits of red. It's always nice to have a little bit of warm color. As usual, I'm tilting the paper to get the color to mix on the paper. And now I'm going to add some salt. The salt will be more effective if you just put it in a few places and not over the whole thing. Salt gives it that mottled texture, but it's got to be brushed off when you're done. So first I brush off the salt, and then I start removing the masking. I'm showing you how you can remove the masking with your finger, but you have to be careful you don't rub a blister on your finger. There's a handy little thing you can get from the online art stores that's not very expensive, called a masking pickup or a misket remover, and you can use that to safely remove masking from your paper without damaging your fingers. Now I put on a lot of flowers, so I'm just going to go over some of these with a little bit of a light blue gray to push them in the background. Often your flowers are not going to need a lot of finishing touches if you've got the sponging done well. So I'm leaving 3 main flowers to be my center of interest in composition. And I mixed up more green to paint the stems on carefully. This is almost all the painting you need to do. There's lots of ways you can add to this picture, and just check out the website for more examples. But I'm going to show you, I'm adding a few little tiny flowers with my brush, but I don't want them to have too much value contrast, so I dab most of it up with my paper towel. Your flowers will look better if you don't do the same thing to each and every one of them. Leave some of your flowers untouched and finish some of them a little bit more. Variety is the spice of life, and that's true with art. Here's my finished painting. I left the flower in the bottom right untouched, and that's just one example. I hope you have great wildflower paintings. Happy painting!